Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu is probably still the worst movie title I've heard in my 29 years of being alive. And I've been a pretty avid hater of this movie since its conception because I absolutely loved Star Wars growing up. It was my favorite movie franchise by far. If I never got into Star Wars, there's probably a good chance I would have never wanted to become a filmmaker. So to me, it's a big deal. I want this franchise to be handled with proper care. And I think any rational human being would agree that Disney has completely mishandled this franchise ever since they bought it from George Lucas. Like, this has to be the closest I will ever get to feeling like a Jets fan.
I hate this team.
There have been blips of good things. I loved The Force Awakens when it came out. It was completely ruined by the following two movies. I still have to catch up on Andor Season 2. I know, it's crazy. But Star Wars is in this really uncomfortable transitional period where we are just now leaving the Kathleen Kennedy era, and she is the one that pushed to make this movie in the first place. And we are now stepping into the age of Dave Filoni, who, if you don't know, has been mostly known for doing a lot of the animated stuff like Clone Wars and Rebels. And from what I've seen, like, he is really good at doing that specific kind of Star Wars thing. He excels in animation. And for almost a decade now at this point, he and Jon Favreau have been creating this Mandoverse, which has been pretty much only on Disney+. It includes stuff like the seasons of The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, which is abysmal.
Like a panther. Yes.
The Ahsoka show, which I didn't think was great, but I did think it was a little bit better than a lot of people gave it credit for. And then there's that Skeleton Crew show, which I heard decent things about. I just haven't seen it yet. I remember watching the first episode of The Mandalorian. It came out the day Disney Plus came out. My roommate got it at the time. And those first two seasons, I do think are overall like solid, well-made seasons of television. But that kind of storytelling is just not really for me. I know a lot of people liked that each Mandalorian episode felt like its own adventure that you were going on in the galaxy. I get it, but I just prefer shows that have the classic TV storytelling element where each episode is building to something bigger that's going to happen later. And The Mandalorian just always feels like every episode is its own thing, except for like the arcs at the end of the seasons. I think the last like 3 or 4 episodes of season 2 of The Mandalorian are by far my favorite because it feels like we are building to something and there's payoff within each of those episodes. But then season 3, like we all agree, was not good. It just like kind of ended the entire show on a whimper. But now 3 years later, we have this movie, which is being pitched as like a solo adventure movie that anybody could watch regardless if you have seen the show. And I got the chance to see it a little bit early at a press screening. I have been sitting on this movie for almost 48 hours now. I really wanted to give this movie the fairest shot possible. I try and go into every movie pretty neutral, but I've been public about this. I just thought this entire thing was a bad idea. But listen, man, like, I love Jon Favreau. I think he's got a lot of talent. And I believed he could prove me wrong. I wanted to come out saying like, yeah, that belongs on the Blu-ray shelf next to every other epic Star Wars movie. And after sitting on it for this long, I was trying to think like, what movie does this remind me of in the franchise? Like, what Star Wars movie is the most similar to The Mandalorian and Grogu? And then I realized like, oh, it's not only similar to this movie, but it's borderline a sequel to it. It's Dave Filoni's original Clone Wars movie from 2008, which I saw in theaters when I was 11 years old. The summer of 2008, I saw Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and Star Wars, The Clone Wars. One of those movies was awesome. The other inspired me to become a filmmaker. And the third was a piece of shit. That was one of the first times in my life where I was like, oh wow, movies could actually be bad. They're not always good. I know the Clone Wars show ended up becoming something great that a lot of people adored, but that movie, man, if you haven't seen it, it is rough. It is essentially the pilot of the TV show where it's like the first 4 episodes that they plan to do, and it's kind of just stitched together into a movie that they decided to put on the big screen instead of TV where it belonged. And if you've seen any other review of this movie so far, the people are not lying. All this movie is like 4 or 5 episodes that are stitched together that you could watch on the big screen. And for some people, that's going to be enough. Favreau and Filoni have been on the record of saying they had some ideas for what they wanted season 4 to be, and then they had to pivot into making a Mandalorian movie, and they talked about things that got cut from Mandalorian season 4, but they haven't really said that, oh yeah, this is kind of a lot of the ideas we had for season 4. They haven't said it, but if they deny it, I think it's absolute horseshit. The way the entire movie is structured just It constantly feels like, oh, we just finished this episode. Now we're going to finish this episode. And now this is an idea for another episode. And if I had to ask myself honestly, like, man, do you think you would have liked this if this was just Mandalorian season 4? And I have to put myself in the mindset of binging season 4 because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're watching 5 episodes in one night. And I still think my answer is like, probably not. It's definitely not as good as season 2. It's definitely not as good as season 1. It's probably better than season 3. But it's like, don't you want more than that? Don't you want the Mandalorian and Grogu, the movie, to be like the best Mandalorian thing ever? There's a few decent ideas. There's some cool-ish action set pieces. But those little moments aren't enough for me to call this a good movie, you know? And it's hard for me to recommend this to family and friends. And the more I sit on this movie, the worse it gets. When you're watching it, you're like, this isn't terrible. Because in your head, you thought this was going to be terrible. But then that expectation, when you watch a movie that's just like fine, passable, has no passion whatsoever, a lot of critics go, oh yeah, you know, like there's some fun here. And they give it like the thumbs up on Rotten Tomatoes. And there are people that like this movie, but I don't think anybody loves it. Like there's not a single passionate person about this movie. It just feels like a lot of the reviews, people are being like, yeah, you know, I had a good time. It was pretty fun in some parts, but the movie's fine and I'll give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. And those people are the exact reason movies are terrible right now. And maybe this is a hot take, I don't know, but when I go to see a Star Wars movie, I want it to be good. I want to walk out and be like, man, guys, that was awesome. And an awesome movie to me is like an 8 or a 9. A fine or meh movie is like a 5. And when it comes to Star Wars, whether you love or hate the prequels, whether you hate or love episodes 7, 8, or 9, you can't deny that when you walk into any of those movie theaters, there is like a standard of expectations where you're going in and you're like, man, I'm about to watch something that whether it's terrible or whether it's incredible, I am walking into a monumental event. Like this is something that is going to matter. The standard of expectations is so different, right? Like the last movie came out 7 years ago. It was The Rise of Skywalker. It is abysmal. It is the worst Star Wars movie by a mile. So then when a movie like this comes out that isn't offensively bad, like The Rise of Skywalker was, a lot of people write that off as a good thing. They're like, you know what? We're making progress. But the more I think about it, it's just the most passable, bland, forgettable movie imaginable. And it made me bring my rating down a half star. The more I sat on this movie, I was like, I can't do it. I can't give this a 4. It's got to be a 3 out of 10. And maybe that's because I have higher standards for myself and the world of entertainment, because we as movie fans, as movie critics, whatever it is, we can't keep going to these movies and then saying it's not fair that Hollywood and movie theaters are dying. Because these filmmakers and these studios, they're not even fucking trying to please you. They're not trying to give you anything good. They know they could just slap a name on and you're going to go buy a ticket. There is zero passion in this movie. It doesn't feel like anybody gives a fuck about what's going on. And it just feels creatively bankrupt at every single corner. Like, I'll be honest, I am not a Last Jedi defender. I think that movie kind of sucks. But I give Rian Johnson credit. At least he took a big fucking swing. And I can respect that. Even if I don't agree with it, even if I think you strike out pretty embarrassingly, I at least appreciate that more than not even going up to the plate and taking a swing. This is like bunting. Watching The Mandalorian and Grogu feels like eating plain chicken breast with no seasoning. It's the most flavorless thing you could possibly consume. But at least plain chicken breast is healthy for you to consume. This movie is not. Because I just feel like we're investing in the wrong future of Star Wars here. Star Wars is the coolest where you introduce a bunch of new characters in a different era that we haven't seen before. Say what you want about the prequels, but we got introduced to a lot of stuff. It was very different from the originals. A lot of people think it's a lot worse, and they're probably right. But at least they're trying something different and cool. Like, we really did not need an Obi-Wan show. That was such a massive disappointment. We don't need to see Darth Vader a million times. Give me an Old Republic trilogy. Give me that Dawn of the Jedi movie that James Mangold's working on. That is something that I could buy into. And again, Dave Filoni seems like a super nice guy. Super talented when it comes to the animated shows. I think George Lucas absolutely loved him. Besides George Lucas himself, Dave Filoni is the guy that knows more about Star Wars than anyone else on the planet. I'm not going to take take that away from him. I think he knows what he's talking about. But just because you know more about Star Wars does not mean you know more about storytelling. And I think that is the biggest problem with all of these movies. They aren't trying to create anything new or interesting. They're just trying to fill in gaps between episodes 3 and 4, between episodes 6 and 7. They're trying to fill in gaps between episodes 2 and 3 with whole animated shows. And then we make sequels to those animated shows with live action series where if you didn't watch the animated show, you're going to be a little bit lost. Not even a little bit, you're going to be absolutely lost. And it just becomes a nightmare from a consumer. Like, I'm somebody, it is my job to kind of keep up with this stuff and explain it to people. And when I'm even struggling to catch up with a lot of those things, how do you expect the average person that just wants to watch a Star Wars movie to also keep up? Do you know how many people aren't going to go to the theater this weekend because they have no idea if they need to watch the Mandalorian show or not? And then when you watch the Mandalorian show, you realize, oh wait, I also have to watch the Book of Boba Fett for some reason. And then when you watch the Book of Boba Fett, you realize you have to watch Ahsoka season 1, which ties back into the Mandalorian season 3. It's a fucking nightmare to deal with. And it's like, Dave, can we just do something new already? And this is a completely spoiler-free review of the Mandalorian and Grogu. Besides one, the most minor spoiler you will possibly ever hear. I swear to God. But the more I think about it, the more it just pisses me off. It is literally the thing that brought my rating down. And it won't ruin the movie for you, but it absolutely ruined it for me. There is a scene in this movie where the Mandalorian walks into a room full of like New Republic pilots and soldiers and all that. And there is a 3-second shot of Dave Filoni sitting at the bar with his stupid ass fucking cowboy hat. And he just looks so out of place in a room full of Star Wars characters. Like, bro, put yourself in the movie, sure, but take off the fucking cowboy hat, man. Like, imagine if in Empire Strikes Back, they're filming it on set and George Lucas all of a sudden goes, hey, you know what we should do? Why don't we put me in the background of Cloud City and I'm just wearing a fucking cowboy hat? I would hope to God somebody on set would be like, yeah, George, you know what? How about we don't do that? I think you would really stand out in a room full of aliens. And Dave Filoni is now the top dog at this studio. A lot of people are going to like what he does. A lot of people like all this Clone Wars stuff. They like repeating the same characters, getting their same shows over and over again. But I just think they have done something that was almost impossible to do, where they have made such a crazy bottleneck where it is impossible to get into Star Wars now. People like my dad, my sister, my friends that grew up loving Star Wars, like liking those first 6 movies and seeing 7, 8, and 9, they don't give a shit about this anymore. They feel so out of touch. My dad was like, wait, there's a Star Wars movie coming out? So you have people that think they have to watch the shows to watch the movie, and they're kind of right. You kind of have to. And then a lot of other people just think this looks like a bad cash grab. And at the end of the day, this just feels like the most pointless movie ever made. And let's just get into it. Let's actually talk about the movie now. I already mentioned how this movie pretty much feels like 4 or 5 episodes that are stitched together to make a movie. But what I didn't tell you is that those 4 or 5 episodes are pretty boring. I won't get into all of them because I know a lot of people still have yet to see the movie. But all I will say is I think the first half of the film is way better than the second half. And the second half just drags a lot more because to a point, like in the early parts of the film, I'm like, you know what? This isn't that bad. There's been a couple exciting scenes so far. Like maybe I was being too hard on this movie. And then I checked my watch and I was like, holy shit, I have another hour and 20 minutes of sitting here. And from that point on, it just felt like the movie, I think it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. It felt like I was there for 2 hours and 45 minutes. It felt so long. And we could blame the pacing, but at the end of the day, this is a writing issue. And I think a lot of the writing for this movie is pretty bad. There's just exposition in every single fight scene. It feels like you're watching a fucking Dora the Explorer episode. Because the Mandalorian's like fighting something and then someone will like say something from above him and be like, oh, you know, if that thing bites you, its poison will kill you. It's like, yeah, buddy, I assume this big ass monster with poisonous teeth was probably not a good thing to be bit by. Like, thank you for that information. And the argument that defends this kind of dialogue is that this is a movie that is made for kids. And after seeing it, I agree with that. There are a lot of scenes where it is just Grogu and the Babu Frick kind of clan of aliens where they are just going off on these side quests and it feels very goofy. Admittedly, it's cute family humor. Like, I do think a lot of kids are going to find it funny. And I understand that choice from like a Disney marketing perspective. I just kind of hate it as like a movie fan because I do think there's a distinction between like a kid's movie and a family movie. Star Wars has always been in the family category where you could take any kid age from like 5 to 15 and they're going to have a great time watching a Star Wars movie. And their parents are probably going to be like, man, you know what? That was pretty awesome. That's what Star Wars should be. It shouldn't feel like you're taking your kids to see the Paw Patrol movie. And I have not seen that. that, but I imagine that is the main inspiration for a lot of the Baby Yoda scenes here. And even though so much of this movie is meant for like a 7-year-old to laugh at, the weird part is that the other half of the movie is kind of scary to the point where I would never recommend this movie to anyone under the age of 7. There's just this weird mix of tones that I don't think works in a movie. It does work if you have a season of television where each episode is its own thing and you could pick like, you know what, this one's too scary for my kid, but this one isn't. Let's show him this. And it also doesn't help that this movie is one of the ugliest things I've seen in a long time. I don't want to act like every single frame in here is horrendous. There are a couple practical sets. They do look pretty good. It does feel like Disney put a little bit more money into this compared to some of the other Mandalorian shows overall, but a lot of the movie just takes place in areas that are dark. It looks really smudgy a lot of the times, especially on an IMAX screen. It just felt like, wow, this should have been touched up a little bit more. And I think some of it's forgivable because the Mandalorian's always been in like the crime side of Star Wars, right? It's kind of bounty hunter adjacent where you have a lot of crime, grimy underworld kind of areas. But the marketing, everyone kind of knows that the Hutts are involved in this movie to a degree, and they have a planet, and everything on that planet that is indoors, they have like these cave systems going on. All of it just looks brown and gross and kind of just not interesting. These parts of the movie truly look like sludge, and it doesn't feel like a stylistic choice at all. It feels like, hey, we have a lot of CGI characters here, lots of droids, lots of Hutts, lots of bounty hunters that are fully CGI. So instead of putting them in really well-lit areas, let's just put them with the darkest backgrounds possible so you could barely see them. And speaking of the Hutts, there are a handful of them in this movie. They are pretty much the backbone of the story to a degree. And every time they show up on screen, I'm like, man, is this really the best we could have done? When Jabba the Hutt looks way better in 1983, is this the best visual CGI that we could do? And not only do they look terrible, I just feel like I don't need to see the baby Hutt from the Clone Wars movie all grown up fighting in an arena. Like, that's just not something on my Star Wars bucket list of things I have to see. It just really feels like we're at the very bottom of the idea list for Dave Filoni, and now we need new people to come in with a new list. The voices for the Hutts also don't sound good. Like, they have this weird reverb effect on them where it feels like it's almost AI auto-tuned to a degree, especially because they use English. I had to Google if the Hutts could speak English. I guess they can, but a lot of them choose not to because they look down upon it. We should have just stuck with that because Jeremy Allen White's voice as what's his name? Rada the Hutt is just not good. It just sounds so goofy when you're watching this thing talk and Jeremy Allen's reverbed voice is coming out of its mouth. I also thought like a lot of the syncing of the voices coming out of the creatures' mouths just didn't line up on screen, especially when it comes to the Martin Scorsese alien. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. He just talks and it just doesn't match his voice and it feels off. And I still can't believe Martin Scorsese is in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. It actually feels like a humiliation ritual to a degree, but Marty needs to pay for those expensive movies somehow. So if this is what it takes to get Scorsese's next movie, I'll take it. I won't love it, but I will take it. In terms of things I liked about the movie, I think the action is decent enough to a degree. The opening sequence is probably the best sequence of the movie. It feels like they put a lot of money into it. That is the one part of the movie where it feels like, oh, this was meant to be on a big screen. And when you watch that, you're like, yeah, this would probably be the most expensive episode of the TV show. That's all it feels like. And I just don't think the rest of it lives up to that, even though there are a couple action sequences I think are decent. The arena fight with Rada the Hutt, like, even though I didn't think it ended up being the best thing ever, it was still intriguing enough to me where I was invested to be like, what the hell does a fight with a Hutt look like? So I gotta give credit there, and I think some of the other creature designs in that are kind of interesting. Not all of them are great, some are better than others, but I at least thought like, you know what, we're at least putting some new stuff in here. The second coolest fight happens about halfway through the movie. There's like this really cool fight with a creature is all I'll say without spoiling it. And that put a smile on my face. I was like, okay, like this is also something new. Like this is cool. But then some of the other stuff just doesn't feel that fleshed out. Like I think a lot of the choreography feels a bit slow. Like there's a one-on-one fight with Mando and Bounty Hunter, the Bounty Hunter that's fully CGI, and none of it looks real whatsoever. I think it looks really bad. And then in the opening sequence, there's a few moments where Pedro Pascal's supposed to be doing these cool moves, and he just looks so slow and like no one's reacting to anything. And it just feels like instead of a stunt double, they picked up a kid from Comic-Con that had a cool costume and said, here, you do it. That's what it felt like. And in a franchise that is known for such well done choreography, I think it stands out pretty bad. I also kind of dig a lot of Ludwig's music here. We all know he's one of the best in the business. I mean, his Mandalorian theme from the get-go has always been awesome. The Mandalorian theme, hearing it on an IMAX speakers, it's really cool. But he adds had some new tracks here. I think he's doing something really different with Star Wars. I appreciate someone trying something new. I just feel like they kind of repeated one of the tracks over and over and over again to the point where it became kind of funny. But I gotta give credit where credit's due. He tried something new, and I like that. There's also some cool little things here and there. Like there's a couple of battle droids that are used, and they're a bit older, so the voice box is a bit more like rusty and dying out. Little things like that I do appreciate. But again, these little things just, they aren't good enough for me. Like at the end of the day, I was sitting there and just watching this, and I'm like, is this really what Star Wars has become? I know I have no power at Lucasfilm, but I truly cannot believe that this is the best effort we could have. I mean, there's those Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games that, from a storytelling perspective, they're not even doing anything that groundbreaking, but they just have a really good story they're trying to tell. There's no crazy twists. They're not doing something that has completely revolutionized storytelling. It's just good characters with good storytelling. And even those games have some like cameos that tie into the other movies. But even when they show up, they do it in a really cool way. And those games just feel like they're a lot more satisfying than anything Disney is doing with their Star Wars content right now. I don't have much faith in the Sean Levy Star Wars Starfighter movie coming out next year, just based off of Levy's reputation. I just think it's going to be a very, 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 very safe movie that ends up being passable and forgettable, kind of like this. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I just don't think we have Star Wars in the best hands right now. Like, it truly baffles me that Christopher Nolan has been on the record of saying he would love to make a Star Wars movie, and instead they hired Taika Waititi. Like, you truly can't make it up. They don't care. They really don't care. They don't want anything good. They just want to make some money. But you have to realize, guys, if you make something good, you're gonna make money. No one cares about Star Wars right now. And that hurts to say, but it's the truth. Like, who truly gives a fuck at this point? As a fan, I feel tortured. Like, yes, this is a better movie than The Rise of Skywalker. It's better than the Clone Wars animated movie. Like, congratulations. To me, that's not good enough. You need to do better. And if that's enough for you, God bless you and your taste. But for me, I expect more. I want more from this franchise. Someone one day will save us. For me, this is a 3 out of 10. When I first walked out of the theater, I gave it a 4 because, again, I don't think this is like the worst movie ever, but I've been writing notes for this movie for like 36 hours now. The more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, no one cared on this set. Nobody wanted to make this movie, so why should I give them the benefit of the doubt here? I understand this was not fully Favreau and Filoni's fault. I understand that Kathleen Kennedy kind of forced them to make this movie, but I don't think Kathleen Kennedy said, hey, Dave, why don't you wear your stupid fucking cowboy hat on set on a rebel base? Like, there's just so many decisions I can't get behind here. Like, truly, what are we doing? I have no faith Dave Filoni is going to fix this entire ship. I think we need to get a whole new set of people in on here. I think Dave Filoni should just do the animated stuff because he's really good at that. But I'm Chase. I have a YouTube channel where I tell the truth about movies, and that's probably going to piss some people off sometimes. I know I have varying takes, but I always stay true to myself on here. So if you like that, be sure to subscribe. We're going to be talking about 2 of my favorite horror movies of the year so far in an upcoming video, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thanks.